for those students as well. I have a bit of a personal story for you. It's regarding my cousin who is in grade 4 or 5 this year. Irregardless, I think she's in grade 5, but this year she has been diagnosed with a learning disability called Erlin syndrome. And what it is when she looks at white light, for instance, writing on a white piece of paper, such as this, it doesn't look like this. It doesn't appear that clear. It appears blurry, and she can't really focus. And she didn't know that she had this learning disability until, grade 5. And she just thought that that's the way pages looked, and she felt that she was just, dumber than the other kids because she couldn't read. She couldn't understand what it said on the page. And so as a result, she spent a lot of time in the hallway, and she spent a lot of hours each night getting things done, and she had very low grades. And they were talking about her being kept back last year, but they ended up letting her go forward. And but solved the problem was she just got a different colored paper. She now uses not white paper, and she can read just fine. But that was a problem that affected the amount of time each night that she spent doing homework, the amount of involvement that her mother, my aunt, had to take in her homework. Yeah, it's something to keep in mind when you have students who have learning disabilities or things like that. You need to take that into account when you're assigning homework for the class. Motivation. We've had a presentation on student motivation before, but I'd like to talk just briefly about homework can be very motivating for students. And the reason that it can be motivating is because it helps students learn what causes success and what causes failure. This is not things that you're assigning them in class. This is things that you're assigning to do outside of class. And so if they work at it, or if they do it and put forth an effort, they're going to succeed. And if they don't do it, if they procrastinate, if they do other things, play video games, go on the computer all night, be distracted, they're going to experience failure. And it's a setting in which they can learn the differences between the two, and they can understand the differences between the two. So, what are some good guidelines when we're assigning homework? Well, not guidelines, but some things to keep in mind. Students should have a very clear picture of what the final product should look like. If you make it ambiguous or you don't explain it well enough, you're going to get a lot of assignments and projects handed in that aren't very good. And the reason that they probably are like that is because the students didn't really understand what exactly it was that you were expecting them to do. So it's very important that when you're not there to supervise them specifically, that you give them a very good picture of what they're going to need to do. Another thing is avoid fluff assignments, things to fill their time, or a worksheet for English on verbs, say. If they don't, let them do that in class. That's not something they need to take home and do, and they're not going to really learn anything if they do that at home. I know when I took home things like math, pages of math, like I do the math in school, and then the teacher would assign a specific math project for home. I just use a calculator, and I didn't learn anything. I didn't know I had the hardest time getting my multiplication tables down because I never did it at home because I just used a calculator. Math questions, pages and pages of math questions for me was a fluff assignment, and it wasn't until I was forced to sit there and do the work, and it was under very strict supervision, that I learned it. And sometimes the parents can provide that, but sometimes the parents won't provide that. It really depends on the students that you have that year. Don't give homework passes. All homework that you assign should be important enough to the students' learning that it's important that they do it, and they can't just avoid it. It shouldn't be something that you should be able to avoid. If you're going to sign up for homework, it's got to be important enough that you won't not let them do it. Pardon the double negative. Don't give homework on weekends or holidays. The students Most students are full-time students. All students are full-time students in elementary school and in high school. And we don't expect our full-time employees to work on weekends and holidays, and therefore we shouldn't expect our students to work on weekends and holidays either. Occasionally, let the students identify what would be most effective. This is very important for things like final projects in a unit or in a unit or in any type of lesson. If you want to something to evaluate, so that you know that they've done the learning. Let them identify what's the best way for them to prove to you their knowledge. What is effective homework? It depends. It's going to depend on your students each year, each semester. You're going to have different students, they're going to have different strengths, and they're going to have different weaknesses. And therefore, what's effective for them is going to change each year. The reason that it works well to have them create their own type of evaluation tool, their own type of project, is because it then lets them draw upon their own strengths and their own weaknesses and decide how to best convey their learning. And not only are they conveying their learning, but they are learning in the process of doing that. And they're creating good study habits in the process of doing that. My favorite homework assignment project that I ever got was making a movie in my French class. Me and a group of guys got together on a farm, and we made a movie about aliens who invaded the planet. And I learned so much about filming and especially about computers that time, because I had to edit on the computer. And based on that knowledge that I gained from doing that film and learning how to use the editing program, I have been employed for the past 2 summers making movies with kids, filming them and then editing them on the computer and ultimately producing them. That's probably one of the most valuable things I've ever learned in school. And it was something that I learned on my own for a project that I chose to do myself. But there's a quote by Alfie Cohen that I wanted to read for you, just to close off. And it reads, "The fundamental choice we face as parents and teachers is whether our primary obligation is to help children love learning or to get them accustomed to the gratuitous unpleasantness so that they can learn to deal with it." What's our ultimate goal? To teach students, to get students to learn. Our goal is not to get them to have good scores on their evaluation. And when we assign homework, we have to make sure that they're learning because of it.